Hey, what's going on? Nick Unsworth here, and I'm a kick-ass business coach, and I'm on an absolute mission to help you find your purpose in life, to help you love what you do for work every single day, to help you be the rock star that you are meant to be, to make more money than you ever thought was possible, and to have more time freedom so you can actually enjoy the life that you're living. I'm here to help you set your life on fire. Hey, what's going on? Nick Unsworth here, just hanging out with the ducks and the geese, just hanging out. So I'm out in Florida right now because I just did an incredible episode with Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. That's why I'm all dressed up. It is probably 90 degrees right now, so but it was incredible. So I just want you to mark your calendar. October 15th, we're starting the Life on Fire Virtual Summit. So lifeonfirevirtualsummit.com. And I just shot an incredible episode with Kevin Harrington, the guy from Shark Tank. He's done billions of dollars in revenue, and he shares how to raise money as an entrepreneur, how to get business partners. Super cool. So, but for today, what I'm going to be drilling down on today is actually the topic of purpose. So this is a behind the scenes. This is kind of going inside what it feels like to be one of our coaching clients. We've got weekly calls every single week. And for this particular session, we're going to take you guys behind the scenes, and we've got about a 45-minute training, which is from Steve Olsher, New York Times Bestselling Author. Steve Olsher lives out in San Diego now, and he shares content about what is your what, how to figure out your purpose in business, because when you have unlocked your purpose in business, you end up in inspired action. You end up getting more done, having more fun, and living a life on fire, and the money follows. So what's coming up next is Steve Olsher sharing his training on how you can take purpose and weave that into your business. So follow me. We have a very, very special call here for you guys today. So we've brought in one of the big dogs. We've brought in New York Times Best-selling author Steve Olsher, who has just recently moved out here to San Diego. So we're super stoked to have him here in our neck of the woods. And we just found out that he may be attending our mastermind that's out here in San Diego on Friday. And so, guys, I know we've got some local San Diegans that haven't had committed just yet to coming to the mastermind. If you're on that fence, we've got a couple spots. We could make it happen for you. So if you're not going to the mastermind, you definitely want to get here. It's going to be extra special having Steve here. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of background. I won't steal his thunder, but this is how I look at Steve. From the guy's clearly a marketing expert with getting a book to the top of New York Times bestseller. And what I love about Steve is that he's got such a message and a mission. And when I think about living a life on fire, one of the biggest components, and this is what we always talk about, is one of the pillars we have out of the four, one of them is purpose. And when you're in that alignment, when you have figured out your purpose, that's when you're loving what you do for work every day. That's when you're attracting clients with ease. You're living within your authenticity, and things are happening in an easier fashion. It's the difference between Unsworth, failing at 11 businesses and, even selling one and still wasn't happy, and then boom, got in alignment, figured out my purpose, and Life on Fire was born. So that's Steve's expertise, is to help you reinvent yourself and to help you figure out what is your what is your purpose, what is the one thing that you're here to do on this earth. He's been featured on CNN, on TED, on ABC, Forbes, Fox, the Huffington Post, NBC, and many more. So he is America's reinvention expert, and I'm very honored to welcome Steve to the call. What's up, my man?
Hey, what's up, Nick? How you doing? How's my volume okay?
Yeah, volume is good.
Excellent. So thanks so much for having me. I mean, I really do appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and you're so right on, man. And it's funny. It's like, I think you were reading some of my slides, right? Because a lot of what you talk about in terms of alignment is just, it's so on point. And then, the benefits of being in that sweet spot are really immeasurable. So it's just, I mean, it's so cool that that's how you view things, and I know that's been one of the key factors to the incredible growth that you've had with your business over the duration here, because it's so much different when you've got a fire in your soul to jump out of bed every day to
Right.
do what it is that you're truly compelled to do. And so just to kind of give a brief overview. Nick asked me to present. I'm thrilled to be able to do it. I'm going to keep it to about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. But at the same token, Nick, Ryan, you guys, if there are questions, I'm happy to keep this interactive. I mean, I truly believe in an interactive, collaborative environment. So I'm not sure exactly how you have this set up, but if people do have the ability to ask questions, happy to do it. Or if you're reading them and you just want to chime in, and Nick, obviously, if you have any feedback or input, on anything throughout, Ryan, of course, as well, please feel free to do so.
Definitely, and that's a great point. And guys, so why don't you head over to the chat box and just say what's up, say where you're calling in from, and say hi to myself, Ryan, and Steve, and then definitely just give that chat box a workout. So I'll kind of be the moderator, so that you guys, can any questions that you have, we'll have some time at the end to get them answered. So, so pop over to the chat, say hello, and let's rock and roll.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks. I really just so appreciate you having me on. So I want to jump straight into what this presentation is designed for. And this presentation is really designed for one specific reason, which is, if you kind of go back to your high school geometry class, you probably remember this is called a Venn diagram. And so a Venn diagram obviously has the different areas, squares, circles, triangles, whatever. In this case, this is circles, and you can see how they overlap. And it's that sweet little spot there in the middle where the concentric circles overlap that is labeled dream job. And to get to the point of feeling as though you're just absolutely living in alignment, as Nick said, and you have this dream job, if you will, that is just, it's really just, it's inseparable from who you are. I mean, it's just, there's no effort. As Nick said, it just flows. And that's when the magic truly comes to fruition, when you find something that you absolutely love to do, something that you're really good at, and equally important, what someone will pay you to do. And I look at this kind of like a tripod, right? Which is, if you can picture a tripod, you take out one leg, right, and the whole thing topples over. So, you could have something that you absolutely love to do and something that you're really, really good at. But if no one pays you for it, of course that doesn't work because you go broke. You could also have something that you're good at and something that someone pays you to do, but if you have no love for it, you'll always have one foot out the door. Now, one of the things that I really want to make sure you're clear on as we go through this presentation is I talk about landing in the middle of these concentric circles. Call it dream job, call it your what, call it alignment, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter. What is truly important insofar as the work that I have done now, literally with thousands of people, is that the question that a lot of people have is, because I'm good at something, does that mean that I'm truly compelled to do it? And so, for example, let's say you're a filer, right? I mean, you've been filing like since the age of 12, and they could hand you a stack of files like 6 feet tall, and you could put them away in alphabetical order using the Dewey Decimal System in like no time flat. But that doesn't mean it's truly what you're compelled to do. You may be good at it because you've acquired skill, but there's a huge delineation between what it is that you're truly compelled to do and what it is that you are good at simply because you have acquired skill over time. Now, what the questions are usually around that is, well, I've been doing this for so long, how do I start over? I'm afraid to, do something new. I don't see how I can make ends meet doing what it is that I'm truly compelled to do. And so this perceived safety net consistently just, it stays in place. And we're so afraid really to make that leap because, our fear is that safety net is going to disappear when we make that jump from pursuing something that we're truly compelled to do versus having a job doing something that you're good at. And so this presentation is also designed to really help you understand whether or not you are truly working a job or you are cultivating a career. And there's a huge difference between those two trains of thought. So that's the general purpose of this presentation. And as I said, I want to keep this pretty interactive. So if there are any questions as we go through, feel free. But I strongly believe that it's so possible for you to find something that you love to do, something that you're really good at, and something that people will pay you for. And when I say pay you, I mean pay you exceptionally well, right? I mean, you shouldn't apologize for being paid what you know you are worth, right? I mean, we have this stigma in our society about money. And you look at people like, teachers and firemen and police officers, et cetera, I mean, who are really doing just amazing work in the world, and they're paid, I mean, really peanuts. And then you have these folks that have acquired skill where they can, shoot a ball or hit a ball with a stick or whatever it might be, and they get this inordinate sums of money for what it is that they're good at. And it's like, wait a minute, if they can get paid that kind of money to hit a ball with a stick, shouldn't I be able to get paid extraordinarily well for what it is that I do in my own unique way? And my answer, of course, is absolutely yes, you should. And just because you might be an artist doesn't mean you have to succumb to life as a starving artist simply because you're compelled to draw. And I get it. A lot of people get hung up on the money thing, right? And I totally understand that. And if money's not your bag and you just want to have what you need to sustain your life, that's great. Give the rest of the money away, tithe, support your favorite charity, start a nonprofit, whatever it might be. But you should always be willing to charge what you are worth and what the market will bear. Now, how do you answer this question of what is your what? How do you get to the point of finding something you love to do, finding something that you're really good at, and finding something that people will pay you exceptionally well to do? And this is the equation, the framework that I created around helping people answer that question of how do you find that? And, look, I've been there. In authorland, they say you write the book that you most need. And so, part of the reason why I wrote What is Your What is because of the fact that I needed a guide. I needed something to really help me get on point to cultivating a career versus just simply having a job. And as I read things like What Color Is Your Parachute and, took tests like Myers-Briggs and, StrengthsFinders, et cetera, a lot of those, and I'm not knocking them, but, a lot of those tools left me with more questions than answers. And so as I began down this road of discovery, I realized that there are pieces of the puzzle that are just frankly missing. And we're going to get into some of the further details here of what all of this entails, but my definition of being able to answer the key question of what is your what requires you to understand what your unique gifts are. And when I say gifts, and we're going to talk about passion in a minute here, but when I say gifts, I'm talking about what's in your DNA, right? It's really that which has chosen you as opposed to that which you have chosen. So you are naturally wired to excel in very specific ways, and you have a gift to share that truly is uniquely yours. After you have a really good understanding of what that gift is, the question then becomes, what vehicle are you going to use to share that gift with the world? And then the third part of the equation, which in my way of thinking is probably the most important, but we can argue back and forth on which of these three pieces of the process, pieces of the puzzle are most important. But I honestly believe that if you can identify the people that you are most compelled to serve, you can kind of back into the vehicle that you'll use to serve them, and the gifts that you have will certainly come to the surface. So, look, most people will go through life without being able to identify one piece of this puzzle, let alone all three. And I got to tell you, if you're unclear on one, two, or three parts of this equation, believe me, you are far, far, far from alone. But again, this is the equation that I created. This is the general framework for helping people understand what their what is. Now, there is a process, of course, that goes into each of these steps and bringing these, these answers to the surface. But if you're taking notes, I would highly encourage you to write this down, which is my gifts plus the vehicle that I will use to share my gifts with the world, plus the people that I have identified as those that I am most compelled to serve, equals my what. Now, there's a much longer definition, equation, mantra, if you will, that you can create as we go through this process. But for now, just understand that gifts plus your vehicle plus your people equals your what. So that's when I say what is your what, I don't mean what's your passion. That's, again, we're going to get into that. But what I mean is, how do you answer this question by identifying these three elements of the equation? Now, as we move forward with taking a look at what happens when you have a lack of clarity, because so many people, frankly, have that lack of clarity where they just kind of go through life without understanding what their what is. And that's just, I mean, believe me, I was there for 39 years of my life, and I know that it's not a fun place to be, because what ends up happening is when you're out of alignment, to use Nick's term, look, the reality is you're probably working way too hard and you have little to show for it. And, it's like a week goes by, a month goes by, a quarter goes by, 6 months and a year, and you're still just absolutely pressing full, pedal to the metal, but it's just not producing the kind of results that you really know you can create, but for some reason you're just not able to get there. And it's a fire in your soul issue, right? Because when you don't have that clarity, you just don't have a fire in your soul to, really to jump out of bed every day and serve those who need you most. It's a struggle. It is an absolute struggle to generate revenue and to secure clients. And what ends up happening for most people is they end up with an initial spark, right? It's a question of chasing versus creating the opportunity. And we're going to talk about that in a minute here. But so often we get really fired up to do something, but then over time that fire subsides and we realize that it's not what we're truly compelled to do, and then it becomes unsustainable. So now you've got all this time, this energy, your resources into something that has an expiration date. And so that's one of the things that I absolutely ask you to think about and be honest about where you are in your career right now, which is, does your line of work right now, what you are doing, in your own mind, do you know that it has an expiration date? And if you're sufficiently honest with yourself, you'll come up with that answer. So again, lack of clarity, unwilling to take risks. Now, a lot of people just don't get into this whole process of discovering what their what is and sharing that gift with the world because of fear. And, look, I get it, right? There's so many different things that go into why we're afraid to do something. Now, there's a lot of acronyms out there for fear. Nick, are you do you have one that you use? Did I lose you? Ryan? Anybody?
And this is I'm here. And say again?
I said, do you have an acronym for fear that you like to use?
So I always hear them. I can never remember acronyms, but what I will say is that one of our coaches, Andy Zitzman, and this is always sticks in my head, and he says you've got to friend your fear. And it's one of these things where ever since I turned the corner on fear and when I experience it, it means I know that I'm going to grow and that I have that awareness and I go towards it. And it's like fear is now my friend, because it's like I know that if have crazy fear about doing a project or doing an event or writing a book, it's like, well, I know I'm going to grow, so then I just push harder to go towards it. So Andy Zitzman, friend your fear.
Yeah, and look, man, it's really interesting how you can shift that perspective to embrace that fear. And one of the things that I have just really subscribe to over time now is that, and here's my acronym for fear, it's forget everything about reality, right? Because, the truth is that when you try to do something or when you're thinking about doing something, it's never going to go as good as you hope it will, but it's never going to go as poorly as you're afraid it might. So forget everything about reality. That's my acronym for fear, and it's one of the huge reasons that I've found that people just are unwilling to take those risks. Now, when you have clarity, and we're going to get again to this in the next slide here, but when you have clarity, it's a whole different ball game. And when you are lacking clarity, what ends up happening for most people is they end up competing on price. And so it's almost as if they're in this commodity driven circle where they're pursuing something where they feel their skills can be applied, and then they get into the game and they realize they have competition, sometimes a lot of competition. And so when you look at what the options are when you get into that competitive environment, for most people, their key strategy is to compete on price. And of course, that's a game that you are never going to win. Your margins will get thinner and thinner and thinner until, for all intents and purposes, they may be non-existent. No sense of community. I have found that when you are unclear on what your what is, you really feel like you're going at this alone. And there's no place that scares me more than feeling alone, right? Because we need to connect with other people. And reality is that when you're unclear on what your true gifts are, the vehicle that you'll use to share those gifts with the world, and the people that you're most compelled to serve, you're really going at this in a way where it's impossible for you to attract and connect and collaborate with like-minded people because you're unclear in terms of your own mind. So how can you attract people into your life when you're unclear in terms of those people that you want to attract? So I know that, believe me, I understand what it's like to have that feeling of just being alone. And when you have that lack of clarity, and I hate this more than anything else. It's like you rely on other people. It's like you're always waiting on other people to make decisions. Like you put out a contract and you're waiting for that signature to come back, or you put together a new program and you put it out and you hope that someone buys it. A friend of mine calls it hope marketing. And it's such a scary place to be. And when you're in this place of a lack of clarity, you find yourself waiting on others in ways that just can be very, very stressful. And you know what happens when you have stress in your life. It's just you don't sleep good, you don't eat good, your relationships with others suffer. And so not being clear on what your what is has incredible ramifications that go well beyond just what your career is and how you earn a living. But once you discover your what, it truly is amazing what happens, because you really can't then wait to serve those people who need you most. And whereas before, money for 99.99% of the world is the driving factor, money no longer becomes the driving factor once you discover what your what is, because the revenue flows around what it is that you are truly compelled to do. And you will find that there simply aren't enough hours in the day to get done what you have to do. I mean, things that used to bother you will carry a lot less weight, and you'll really make this shift from being awake to being alive. And there's a huge difference between being awake and being alive. And I got to tell you, when you are clear on what your what is, you're alive. And it's almost a relief. I mean, I don't know how to explain it any other way other than to say it's like just throwing that heavy bag of sand off of your shoulders, which then it just empowers you to soar. And when you're clear on what your what is, you literally will have people banging down your door to pay you at your desired level of compensation. So, when you become known for X, Y, or Z, it's no longer an issue of competition. It's just absolutely, and trust me on this, it's a matter of saying to people, here's how we can work together, here's what I have, here's my price, and if you want to play, great, and if you don't, no worries. It's not a fit for now, perhaps it'll be a fit for later, but there will always be people banging down your door to pay you at your desired level of compensation. And perhaps most importantly, you'll feel engaged. Your life will have this energy that, just it honestly lacks. I meet so many people, and it's it scares me how many people walk into a room and like drag the energy out of it. Nick, I don't know if you've ever experienced that or not, but it's like when someone walks into a room and you just get that sense of the black cloud hanging over their head. It's like you can imagine the kind of people that they attract and really just sort of they say, hey, without saying it, just move away, and that's what happens when you're unclear on what is. That enthusiasm lacks. And Nick, I got to tell you, I mean, I've seen you enough now to know that once it's you light up a room, man, when you walk into it. And I'm sure a lot of your students, your clients here, are the same way. But tell me this, Nick, do you believe that those who are unclear on what their what is, do you think they have that same ability to light up the room?
I don't, and I think that, and I think what manifests is that when you're not in that alignment, I think things are more challenging. Things are stressful. There's sweat and bullets about money, and and when you're in that lack mentality or money is tight, it's like crazy things start to happen. We've seen it in our group. We've seen it, with some of our clients. We've seen it, it's all around us as entrepreneurs. And when you've got that, black cloud, it's like, it repels people. You are repelling success and money into your business, and it's like that's why I'm so excited with your teaching this, is because the more we can drill down on that alignment and to shift that. And it's like, and with your point of like being energized, enthusiastic, or lighting up a room, it's that in what you said before about challenges is that with Life on Fire, we've faced bigger challenges on a more rapid pace than any other business I've ever been a part of, and they're even way bigger. And we've had some just like crazy things that have happened in the business that really could have just really just taken us out of the game, or just we're tough emotionally or mentally. But at the end of the day, I'm so inspired by the purpose that we have. Like you said, that these huge challenges that are the size of mountains in front of me are like anthills, because I'm in that inspired place, and it's like nothing is going to stop me on this mission to help people love what they do for work. And I wish it were easier. Wish we could just tap people on the head and boom, and then they're in that spot. But yeah, it's an amazing thing, and it's something that with our mission with Life on Fire, I mean, this is what we wish for every single person around us. And as we grow as a community, I mean, I think that this is the energy we're going to exude and get stronger as the months go on. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So I do want to just address passion versus purpose, because it's a question that I get quite a bit. And the other question I get is the Simon Sinek, why. Start with why versus your what. So, just so you understand where I'm coming from here, I have nothing against passion. I'm all for people being passionate about something. But remember that when you introduce passion into the equation, you're introducing feelings. You're introducing emotions. And when you have emotions and feelings tied to something, your judgment, frankly, becomes skewed. And so, you could have a passion for cupcakes, but it doesn't mean that that's what you're truly compelled to do. You might just love to bake, So the purpose is, or your what, as I call it, is, again, it's really what's in your DNA. And it's that which has chosen you as opposed to that which you have chosen. So when you look at the question of, passion, should you be passionate about your what? Well, of course. But at the same token, you just have to be clear in terms of whether or not what you're passionate about is in fact your what, or it's just something that you enjoy doing. And far too often we confuse the two. Now, why versus what? This whole start with why movement, which I think is extraordinary. To me, your why is about everything that is external. In other words, it's why you do things. You do things to impact others. You do things to make a better life for your children. You do things to make your wife or your spouse happy, et cetera, et cetera. It's the why behind what it is that you do. Your what is everything that's internal. So to me, your why is everything that's external, and your what is everything that is internal. So again, it's in your DNA, it's in your wiring. So just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Now, I love this quote from Phillips Brooks, and yeah, I think, Nick, are we making these slides available? Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make the slides
Okay.
available along with the replay.
Okay. All right. So don't scramble to write this quote down, but I love this quote. So this is from Phillips Brooks, 1800s. I mean, you can tell, this conversation has been going on for millennia. But what he said is the ideal life is in our blood and never will be still. Sad will be the day for any man when he becomes contented with the thoughts he is thinking and the deeds he is doing, where there is not forever beating at the doors of his soul some great desire to do something larger, which he knows he was meant and made to do. I love that quote, where there's not forever beating at the doors of her soul some great desire to do something larger, which she knows she was meant and made to do. And I knew from a very young age that I was meant and made to do something extraordinary, but I couldn't figure out what that was. And when you have that nagging, kind of tugging at your collar type feeling that you just can't shake, you really have two choices at this point. And the two choices are, you go out and you figure out what your what is, right? Because you may not even be like in the same zip code of what your what is, let alone in the same house, same mind, whatever. And so for a lot of people, that's really a scary place to be, where they don't know what their what is, and you just go out, right? I mean, that's your choice at this point. Now that you understand that there is the opportunity for you to figure out what your what is, you have a choice. It's a conscious choice insofar as what you do from this moment forward. And one of those choices is to pursue what your what is. Of course, you can also not pursue it, but we're going to talk about that in the 3 reasons. But the other choice is, you may actually be already engaged and living out your what today, and living out your what on a consistent basis, but you're just not recognizing it. And so I know a lot of people, like in some of the fields like accounting, for instance, they don't feel like, well, my career's not very glamorous. I work with numbers, et cetera, right? I don't have millions of followers on Twitter, whatever. But, reality is, for that person, if they loved high school math and they graduated with honors, with a degree in accounting, and their clients love them and they always do a phenomenal job with numbers, with accounting, with bookkeeping, whatever it might be, then hell, numbers just might be their thing. But so many people just say there's got to be something more. But reality is, you may very well be living your what right now. And if that's the case, stop fighting it and embrace it and share it with as many people as you possibly can. Now, there are 3 reasons that I have found why most people don't discover what their what is. The first is time and permission. A lot of people just kind of go through life without ever granting themselves the time or permission to truly understand who they are. And when you look at time, right? I mean, there's only 2 ways to use your time. You can spend your time, or you can invest your time. And so many of us spend just an inordinate amount of time on things that don't further our purpose, don't further our trajectory, if you will, towards identifying, sharing, and monetizing what our what is. And so, we live in this instant gratification society where if we don't get these answers like right now, we give up on the process. If our business doesn't make $1 million, this year, we say, okay, that's not it. Let's go on to something else. And it's sad because, it's the story of the farmer who, is digging in his field for oil or diamonds or gold or whatever you want to call it, and he's got, these millions of holes around his whole acreage there, and he just didn't dig far enough on one hole to find whatever that vein of gold or oil or whatever it is that he was looking for, because, again, we want what we want, and we want it now. So if that's where you're at, you may just have to think about how can you grant yourself that time and permission to identify what your what is. Now, it could be meditation, it could be a walk in the park, it could be something that's therapeutic for you. It could just simply be carving out an hour in the morning before you get into your typical routine to start digging deeper into what your what is. The second reason why some people don't figure out what their what is because they're in denial. They're just in flat out denial about what it is. They just have all of these excuses. People won't approve. I don't see how I can make money doing that. It just that can't possibly be it, right? Like going back to the accounting example. And so, man, I got to tell you, just countless people go through life in flat out denial about what their what is. And I truly believe in the butterfly effect, where one action has concomitant reactions, where if you withhold your gift from the world, and even if it's just one person, like if you're an exceptional teacher, and even if it's just 20 students at a time, I mean, if you withhold that gift, you never know how what you say, what you teach, what you do will impact others, and it certainly won't have any impact at all if you don't do it, right? And so what is the concomitant reactions that you then are failing, if you will, to put into action, right? That domino effect, that butterfly effect. Because wholeheartedly, I believe that you are the solution to someone else's problem. And if you're not sharing that solution, you're not only doing a huge disservice to yourself, but you're doing a huge disservice to those who need you most. And the third reason why a lot of people don't figure out what their what is they just don't go back far enough in time to connect with it. Now, what does that mean? It means that I believe that at some point in your life, you were clear on what your what was. Now, maybe you love to paint. And so, at a very young age, you pick up the paintbrush, you love to paint. And so it was just your thing. I mean, it just time absolutely flew by when you were engaged in it. It's what you love to do. But one day when you were painting, you had a favorite color, right? And so let's say your favorite color was blue. And your mama had a favorite color, and her favorite color was white, so all of her carpet was white. And one day when you were painting, that blue paint hit the white carpet, and it wasn't like this Reese's peanut butter cup moment of chocolate meeting peanut butter, and everybody's happy. When that blue paint hit the white carpet, you got yelled at, and even at that young age, you were smart enough to recognize that action A results in pain B, so you bury that to the nether regions, never to be heard from by anyone, including you ever again. So if that's the case, you may just have to go farther back in your life to reconnect with what your what is. So let's take a look again here at the equation. What I encourage you to do is start with, and again, I've got exercises to take you deeper through this, but you may have a really good understanding of how you would answer this, what your gifts are, the vehicle, and the people. But if you don't, start with the piece of the puzzle. This is always how I recommend starting. Is start with the piece of the puzzle that you are clear on. Because, like, for instance, and it's amazing how you can back into some of these answers that because again, if you think about it, right, if you think about your gift, and if you've got this amazing gift, and when I say gift, I mean like an overarching theme, right? Like, Nick, I would say your core gift is probably communication, right? I mean, that's, when you look at all the things that you do, that's probably, it may even be teaching, right? I'm not sure. I know you, but I'm not 100% whether or not the core gift is teaching or if it's communication, but it could very well be a combination thereof. But so when you think about, what that core gift is, the idea here is if you know what it is, but you don't know the vehicle and you don't know the people, then it dies on the vine. If you know the vehicle that you want to use, but you don't know the gift or the people, again, that doesn't work. And if you know the people, but you don't know how to serve them, well, that doesn't work either. So, sometimes the other piece falls into place. Like I teach something called the Reinvention Workshop. And at the Reinvention Workshop, I had a woman who came there. She had been a nurse for about 20, 30 years when she attended and liked her job, but always felt like a piece of the puzzle was missing and she didn't know what it was. And as we went through this process, she became very clear that her core gift is healing. The vehicle that she was using to share that gift of healing with the world was nursing. But the people that she was most compelled to serve was unclear, and so she was working in a general hospital. Now, as we went through this process, it became very clear to her that those that she's really most compelled to serve are the disadvantaged elderly. And so you can see how the equation changes, where you've got teaching, you've got healing, and then nothing for the people, right? You don't know where to work. You don't know where to find these people. You don't know who to serve. But then if you've got teaching, healing, and the disadvantaged elderly, well, now you understand how to move forward, what marketing materials to create, where to use your skills, and so it's really interesting because fast forward 4 or 5 years later now, and she's working in a VA hospital, and she couldn't be happier. But that shift from the general hospital to the VA hospital, really did make all the difference. So think about this equation, and if you're able to answer all 3 parts of the equation, I'd love to hear that, Nick. So maybe we can get into the Q&A. I'd love to hear how others are defining, what their what is. But even if you just know one piece of the puzzle, I'd love to hear that from you too. Now, as you move forward, the most important thing for you to remember, and this is the mantra that I I love using here, because who doesn't love a baby's butt? It's like, that's the question, right? Is your what bigger than your butt, right? And of course, I don't mean your butt, but I mean the excuses that we all throw in our own way, and we sabotage our progress. We sabotage our ability to serve those who need us most. And so, really, as you go through your day, just take stock of how often your what is bigger than your butt, or how often your what is smaller than your butt. And you'll be amazed that once you create that conscious awareness, you realize, oh man, yeah, I'm absolutely allowing this to get in the way of sharing my what with the world. So your what always has to be bigger than your butt. So what are the next steps really here as you move forward? Well, number one, you really do have to gain an understanding of how you're naturally wired to excel. I don't believe that you can create a sustainable business without having that understanding. I don't believe that you can truly serve others until you have that understanding of how you're naturally wired to excel and what is, again, the gifts, the vehicle, and the people. Now, once identified, I'm a big proponent of step-by-step plans, because too often we look at the big picture and we're like, I don't see how I can get there. But if you can look at where you want to be, even if it's a monthly goal, and I know, Nick, you're really good at putting out those monthly goals and sharing those and almost creating that unwritten accountability, which is so cool. And so as you look at creating the step-by-step plan, again, if it's a lifetime plan, if it's a monthly plan, if it's a quarterly plan, doesn't matter, but break it down into steps, bite-sized steps and pieces that lead you back to something that you can start with today, and that will inevitably keep you on path. Now, we didn't have an opportunity to go into my philosophy of yay no, which is a fancy way of saying yes no, but maybe at a future point, Nick, we can talk about that. And then lastly, I think that a huge part of what just kind of gets people in this frame of mind of having really no direction is they're not clear on how they want to impact the world, how they want to be remembered. I know for me, I absolutely want to impact not only those who share this lifetime with me, but also those of lifetimes to come. That's the legacy that I want to leave. And one of the ways that I'm doing that is I'm certifying people to teach my framework. because it's kind of like it's kind of like open code. Nick, I've got like this thing, this framework that I've created. It's very effective, but I want to put it out to the world and let others teach it, because I know that if we can all work on this framework together, it's just simply going to make this process even more powerful. So that's one of the things that I started doing, is because I'm just one person. But if I can get people to teach this framework, that's when things exponentially grow. And I believe so strongly that if we can get people clear on what their what is, can you imagine how things would change, Nick? I mean, if people were clear on what they're truly wired to do, I mean, that's going to make this world such a better place for you, for me, for our kids, and certainly for generations to come. And so, that's the legacy that I want to leave. And Nick said, hey, let's talk about what you can offer. How can you take people to the next level, et cetera. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here to teach, Nick, because I love what you're doing. And I encourage people to, guys, go out and grab this book. I give it away for free. So grab the ebook at whatisyourwhat.com/free, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And of course, if you're not an ebook person, I mean, we've got an audio book and ebook, or though I just said if you're not an ebook person, but you've got a hard copy, go to Amazon, hard copy, put it on your Kindle, whatever. And then of course we've got an audio book as well. But in the meantime, just go to whatisyourwhat.com/free. Feel free to share that link with others. And I got to tell you, the world is absolutely waiting for you. I mean, you have an incredible gift to share, and I can't wait to hear about what it is, and to see how you impact the world, doing so. So, Nick, that's what I wanted to go over today, man. I hope this is a good start. I hope this is helpful, and I'd love to open it up for questions.
Absolutely, man. This has been awesome, and it's a topic that is just such a huge component, of living a life on fire, and it's really one of the first steps in it. In some cases, it can be one of the hardest things to crack, and that's why I think with you having specific knowledge and a proven track record on this topic, it's like for anyone that is still, and it's not just finding the what or your purpose. It's like it's the further refinement, and it's like once a month at least, I might wake up in the middle of the night, and it's little tweaks or optimizations to where we're heading with Life on Fire. And are we still on the same path? Are we still on the same path to build the legacy that we're looking to build? And there's always the adjustment. So it's like wherever you sit on that, on that spectrum, it's definitely I would grab the book. And I think what's cool, what you brought up about legacy, and that's something, if you can be bold enough to think of your life in that way, because we're all meant here to do something with our lives, like, as Steve was pointing out, and we all have gifts, we all have, specific talents, and if you can be so bold to lay that out and think of how you want to be remembered and what is your legacy, it's such a powerful exercise. It's something that that I did. I don't share it often. I don't, because it's a little crazy, but it's and I should share it more. But I mean, the way I look at it is like in my case, it's with Life on Fire. The more people that we can inspire to pursue learning about figuring out their purpose, and they can create that actionable plan and live with purpose and do what they're meant to do. That's part of the legacy, and for me, like the virtual summit with what's coming up, I'm so excited about that, because that is going to add a ton of value for folks that need this content to get them to the next level. And I truly, we're so confident that we've really we've got a really special model with how we're using crowdfunding in October when we launch, that we're going to prove that we can get joint venture partners to want to promote, because it raises money for charity. Plus, there's affiliate commissions involved. And that playbook is something where, my legacy, if I could be so bold to say that, I want to have given over $1 million away to charities in my lifetime.
That's just a drop in the bucket.
Inspire,
you're going to do much more than that. You're going to do much more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's so cool is that, and what if that inspires other people to live their purpose and for them to build a business that gives back, and other people, have a business as an entrepreneur that gives back. It's kind of like if we all become the Tom Shoes of our craft. It's like internet marketing, or if you're an expert at something, and have that as a way of just giving back, and the power of the power of giving, and all these good things. So, it's like, if I can give back $1 million plus and help other people, give back as they build their businesses too. But that, having that in the back of my mind, and seeing little tiny tidbits of progress, building a school in Guatemala, we've got clients that want to build schools in Guatemala with us, those are the little tiny pieces of progress that, validate you, help you know that you're on the way, and it takes massive action, to start to see all those things. So,
Yeah, let
so
me
cool. Yeah.
I just want to address one thing real quick, because I love your point about refinement. And people ask me, quite frequently, so is my what something that I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life, right? I mean, and so I don't want there to be confusion on this issue. What I believe is that your what will continually evolve. It's an organic process. We don't build monuments here. Nothing is set in stone. What I know is that your life experiences and your perspectives shift over time. And so what inevitably can happen is the vehicle that you will use to share your gifts with the world, and the people that you're most compelled to serve, those can absolutely evolve, adapt, and be modified as you move forward. But it's your core gift that I believe stays very, very consistent. So, I mean, you are a teacher, you are a healer, you are a communicator, whatever that core gift is, that's not going to change. But the vehicle that you use and the people that you're most compelled to serve, that can absolutely change over time. Can I give you a quick story on that, Nick?
Absolutely.
Okay,
For sure.
so Nick and I were talking earlier, just a health issue that Nick was dealing with, and I have a friend who was in a similar situation. He had a health issue that really affected his life and changed the trajectory of his life in ways that he couldn't possibly have imagined or even drawn up, because this possibility didn't even exist before it happened to him. And his name is Johnny Immerman. And Johnny is a friend. I'm now in the San Diego area, but he's a friend from Chicago. And he was a very successful commercial real estate broker, just really good at his craft, and people loved him. And he was so genuine, so enrolling, and just, he had no problem getting clients, no problem, making a very good living in commercial real estate. And then he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And it was advanced. I mean, it was by the time they found it, it was very, I don't know what they call it, stage 3, stage 4, whatever it might be, but it was advanced. And he was immediately admitted so that they could treat the cancer. And as he was fighting this battle in the cancer ward, he was surrounded by people who loved him, his friends, his family, and he really credits his full recovery to the love that he received from those around him. But as he walked around the cancer ward, as his friends and family weren't there, as he walked around the cancer ward, he saw others who didn't have anyone to support them and to love them and to help them. And he swore that when he beat this cancer and it was totally in remission and he was healthy again, that he would make sure that people who were suffering from cancer never would suffer alone again. And so what he did was he created a nonprofit called Immerman Angels. And Immerman Angels connects cancer sufferers with cancer survivors. So whatever your affliction is and whatever stage it is, they connect you with someone who has been there. Because, it's like I'm a father, so I can talk to other fathers in ways that other men can't. I mean, women can talk as mothers and as sisters, and I can't, right? I mean, so it's like we all have life experiences and perspectives that are so unique to who we are. And so the what equation absolutely can continue to evolve. And if you had asked Johnny a year prior, hey, do you think you're going to be running a nonprofit that matches, cancer sufferers with cancer survivors? He'd have probably laughed you out of the room. But today, I mean, it's a full-fledged, 5 years later now for Immerman Angels, and I mean, it's a full-fledged organization. They have matched thousands of sufferers with thousands of survivors, and they're having amazing impact. Now, that core gift of enrolling didn't change, but that vehicle and the people he was most compelled to serve did. And that's the beauty of being able to answer that core question of what is your what.
Man, that is such a powerful story. I'm really glad you brought that out because I feel like that kind of it brought all the everything together into that one succinct story, and it's like you see that with I mean people that are just crushing it. I mean they're taking something that's happened to them in their life, and it's like Brendan Burchard. I mean the guy was in a car accident, and that became his eye-opening moment. What if someone had almost died from alcohol abuse and they come back a different person on literally the verge of death, and someone who maybe was just working a regular job, that person could then go off and inspire other people and young kids to get off drugs. I mean there's so many ways to leverage the things, your experiences that you've gone through, and what really just brings out that emotion. And we talk about it as like, I call it the 3 S's. So it's like, what's your story and your background? And hey, for someone it could be leveraging their talent as a, if they've got some kind of crazy talent or that gift. It's like in my case, I was so just adamant about loving what I did for work because I had folks around me in my life that it's not that they hated it, but it owned them, it consumed them, it was their master. They had no time for anything else, and that was like what I drew upon to create Life on Fire. As I thought of what pissed me off from my past, and boom, there it was. And guys, while we've got Steve here, I really, really want to encourage you, if you have any questions, pop them in the chat box. Let us know what's going on. And we've got lots of people that are just been fired up and saying, Molly, this is brilliant stuff, and a lot of people saying it feels like where I'm at right now. The quote gave me chills. Thanks for the great reminder. Molly has some insights as to her gifts and who she's, the people that she's serving in her vehicle. So awesome. And guys, any questions? Pop them in the chat for sure. And Steve, what are other things you're finding? Is there any other techniques, or do you feel that sometimes, like if someone's completely just absolutely stuck and they're in that spot of overwhelm and they're on webinars or they've bought some online courses and they just can't seem to figure it out, and let's say it might be one of your toughest cases, what would be your advice to help them shake that through, and where would you point them and to break through on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, man. The reality is that not everybody is ready. I mean, not everybody is ready for this conversation. Not everybody is ready for even to embrace the concept that there is, in fact, something that they are just naturally wired to excel at, and that there is a what waiting for them if they were to pursue it. And so, what I would say is, first and foremost, you have to make a conscious choice. You have to make a conscious choice to say that where I'm at now is not where I want to continue to be. And so if you have not yet made that conscious choice, there is nothing me, there is nothing Nick, there is nothing anyone in the world, Jesus Christ himself, could do to move you past that, that mindset. And so that's what I always encourage people to do, is to make that conscious choice to say, I want to discover what my what is, that I know it is there, and I know that I have the ability to impact potentially millions of lives. And so for my toughest cases, right, it's always people who say, there's nothing that I love doing. There's no way I could have a what. There's not one amazing thing I was born to do. I wasn't born to do anything. And I could literally take them through the entire process and help them figure out all of the answers. But ultimately, if they still have not made that conscious choice to embrace those answers, to discover what those answers are, it's really just an effort in futility, right? So, the toughest cases that I have ever dealt with are those who just frankly don't want to shift from being awake to truly being alive. And I am not one to judge. There are plenty of people, the masses of people will simply go through life, paycheck, paycheck, do what they got to do, go home, make a good meal, be with their family, go back to their 9 to 5, and that's what they do. And they're perfectly content. And I'm not one to say otherwise. It's really those that are not, that are discontent, who want to make a change, that I can help, and that you can help, and that any of us can help. But I hate to kind of use this expression here, but if people don't want to help themselves, there's really nothing you can do.
That is really well said, and that, it makes total sense. And what's something that it's really fascinating to, and I've come up with this. I mean, after doing hundreds and hundreds of coaching calls, and I rack my brain thinking maybe I'm doing something wrong, and that, of course, I need to get better every day. But what kind of breaks my heart is that as in the entrepreneur space, obviously there's, I mean, shoot, even by the nature of the name Life on Fire, it's like our goal is to live a life on fire and teach that. And it can be inspirational, but it can also be a double-edged sword where if someone truly is content with a job or with that lifestyle, and yet they get wrapped up in the entrepreneur scene, it's possible to beat themselves up so bad and not even want to help themselves to actually make it happen. And so, like, I would I guess the best way for me to explain that would be someone that really doesn't want to help themselves to be an entrepreneur, but yet they're kind of surrounded in that space, and they feel like, I don't know, maybe it's their environment or whatever. But really, for some people, like, I've had to talk some clients into saying, why are you, take a step back. You're building a business that you're struggling at, and you're going negative with, and it's beating you up, and it's ruining relationships around you, and and you have a great job. It's like, life on fire doesn't always have to be an entrepreneurial career, and finding the what doesn't always happen instantaneously. And at the end of the day, I think to your point, Steve, what makes total sense is you've got to be ready to make that conscious decision, and then to take massive action on it and be relentless and not ever quit. Like, you could, the one core thread that I see in many entrepreneurs that are rising and rising is that you can never take their what away.
Yeah.
And as soon as I figured mine out, come hell or high water, come sickness or health, whatever may happen in my life,
Yeah.
nothing will stop me on this mission because I'm clear on it. And so that's what's so key about today, is to really drill down on that, so that you become unstoppable. And yeah, you're going to go through some crap, but like, at least you go through it and it's in alignment and it's easier to handle, and you take it in stride with the wind at your back.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, I mean, I really appreciate the invitation. Hope this was helpful. I got to run, and
Cool.
and just keep me posted on however else I can add value to your community.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much, Steve. We're at the top of the hour, so guys, take massive action right now. The best place to start is whether you've got your what or not. Dive into What Is Your What. It's an awesome book. It's totally for free. Thank you for that, Steve. And guys, for those of you that will be at the mastermind this weekend, just come well rested. Eat clean coming into it. We're going to be really focused. We're going to drill down. We're going to have Steve potentially there on Friday as well. And just come fired up, ready to rock and roll. And you guys have an awesome rest of your day and rest of your week. We'll see you guys. Cheers.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed the training with Steve Olsher. The guy's awesome. He's incredible. He was at our masterminds, and the content is so key and valuable for your business. That's one of the game changers, where once you have that purpose inside your business, everything else changes. So hope you enjoyed, and I also want to encourage you to mark your calendar for October 15th. Life on Fire Virtual Summit. We're featuring 25 of the most incredible entrepreneurs literally in the world. We've got Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank. We've got Tony Hsieh from Zappos.com. We've got Brian Tracy, John Lee Dumas, Chris Ducker, tons of incredible entrepreneurs that we're going to be bringing to you live. So if you're just listening to this podcast on audio as you're driving or as you're walking or going to the gym, or maybe you watch this on your desktop, I want to encourage you to get out from behind the podcast and get into the live version with us, because we're going to be going live so that you can interact, ask questions. It's going to be super cool. So lifeonfirevirtualsummit.com. Join the party with us live, and we're going to help you set your business and life on fire.